Breakout chart setups. Breakout chart setups. Who doesn't want to learn about breakouts? Who doesn't want to learn about the certain chart setups, these certain patterns that are going to lead to massive amounts of profits? Now, the coolest thing about these guys is I don't overcomplicate it. And the best thing to really understand these setups is there's going to be two different families, two different groups. U-shapes and triangles. U-shapes and triangles. That's what we are looking for in the stock market. And you're saying U-shapes and triangles, what does this really mean? Exactly. We are looking for this and that. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for U-shapes to set on up, and we're looking for triangles to set themselves on up. And now you're saying to yourself, well, those aren't even shapes that form in the stock market. Little do you know, right? These U-shapes and triangles are always forming. These U-shapes and triangles are always setting themselves on up. So let's actually break down these U-shapes and triangles so you guys have a little bit of a better understanding behind them. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a screenshot right here so I can draw on these a little bit better. Now, what do we have on our U-shapes and our triangles? Well, whenever we see a U in the pattern, right, what I'm referring to would be if a stock, let's say, ever started spiking, then formed a U-shape pattern, and then again started getting a little bit of a breakout. U-shapes are going to allow stocks to be able to get big time spiking, because what it really does is going to show us where resistance is going to be at. Now, little side note right here. Breakouts happen at the break of resistance. If you want to be a great breakout trader, you need to understand where resistance is going to be happening or where resistance has formed. Resistance, as we know, is going to be where at? Natural resistance, past chart history resistance, detailed resistance. We have lessons on this in the video library, of course, on tradecaster.com. So we could see when we hit a high of the day, that's going to form a resistance line. If the stock U-shapes back up and around, when we break through that resistance line, that's where the stock is going to be able to keep pushing on up. Breaking resistance is going to be the number one way to see buying volume push through at the bottom of the chart. And these lines, what I'm drawing right here, are essentially these lines right here. When we see, again, U-shapes break through the chart, that's where we're going to see big time buying attention. For example, I can see one right here over on EARS, and you're going to see many different ones on EARS. What about, again, right here, where this stock runs on up, hits this top resistance line, right here. That's again our high of the day, 564. What happens when the stock U-shapes back up towards around 564 and starts spiking on up? It hits 564, big time breakout, and look at the bottom right here. Look at this big green buying volume. What is this big green buying volume coming from? That's coming from the U-shape setup. So right there, we're already kind of understanding how U-shapes are going to help us become better traders. U-shapes are going to establish resistance, and when we break through resistance, that's where buying volume comes on in. So there's going to be a lot of patterns and many different setups where we are going to want to look for these U-shaped triangles, or U-shaped setups to lead towards these breaks of resistance. And that's essentially what we're going to be looking at. Now, again, as I said before, it's not only just U-shapes, we're also going to be looking for triangles, right? Now, again, when we have these different triangles, and again, the picture we had before was a triangle like this, we want to basically rotate it, right? So if we rotate it, it's going to be looking a little bit more like that, right? Now, this is the setup we're going to be looking for on the majority of our stocks. We're looking for more of this like right-hand triangle. Now, what would a triangle help us with? Well, what would a triangle basically be? Well, a triangle could be a top resistance line, and then maybe we also have a little bit of bottom support. So if a stock, let's say, ever started spiking up into this triangle, it hits our top resistance, comes back down to support, comes up to top resistance, comes back down to support, up to top resistance, back down to support, and gets tighter and tighter and tighter. When the things get tighter and tighter and tighter, what can you expect? A very nice break, a very nice pop, a very nice spike. The way I always like to think about this in kind of the easiest sense is that imagine like a river, right? Imagine if we were ever looking at a river right here, and we have these big, river banks, right? And this could kind of be like where it initially starts off as a lake. And then again, the lake gets a little bit tighter and tighter until again, it gets more to a river. And as it gets very, very tight, that's where you kind of get to those like whitewater rapids, right? Kind of going in between a canyon. So imagine if this right here is, of course, this ginormous lake right here. You can, sit on a boat, you can enjoy it. If you kept going down the lake, obviously, again, things would get a little bit more crazy as, again, you're getting towards a river. And as you get even tighter, all this water pressure is building on up. That's basically, again, just, crazy whitewater rapids right there, right? Where it's really intense. So that's basically what we have going on when we take a look over on our stock trades. A lot of times, guys, over on our stock trades, instead of the water squeezing itself, it's going to be volume, where we have, let's say, a stock that is spiking on up, spikes on up towards a high. The stock again comes back on down, bounces on up, comes back down, bounces on up, comes back down, bounces on up, and it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter until what happens? Boom! It gets another big time breakout. And we can say to ourselves, okay, hey, that was a triangle where we have our top resistance, and of course, we have our bottom support where the stock squeezed itself and got that next leg and got that next rip. So if you are a brand new trader and just trying to get a little bit of a better understanding of how do breakouts happen, breakouts are going to happen from our two families right here. These breakouts are going to be happening for most cases, either A, from a U-shaped pattern, which is going to be the break of resistance, or it's going to be from a triangle pattern, which is going to lead to a squeeze. So again, we either have a break of resistance or we either have a squeeze. U-shapes and triangles are going to be the fundamentals behind big time breakouts and big time spikes. So, I mean, what could we see right here? I just want to kind of break this down a little bit. And, EARS. EARS has been one of the best spikers today. Let's go back to about a 2-minute time frame at this moment. We'll make this a little bit bigger. And let's just see how many different areas can we see to be able to understand if this has, U-shaped triangle, U-shaped breakouts, or maybe, again, some triangles behind it as well. So, what do we have? First thing that I notice is, again, follow with me right here, team. We have a nice spike on up. If we have a nice spike on up over on EARS, what can we do? That's going to be a resistance line. It hit the high, fell back on down. And as you guys can see right here, this stock is going to have a U-shape. What happens when we start breaking that U-shape pattern and we start hitting a new high of the day? Big time buying volume moves in. Big time buying volume moves in on this play. So what happens? It then runs up to a new high. Runs up to a new high. And after, of course, we run up to a new high, what happens on the stock once again? We have another U-shaped pattern. So we have one U-shaped pattern, which again brought in hype and brought in momentum, led to a new high. Now we have our second U-shaped pattern. Guess what? Brought in momentum, brings in a big time spike, and guess what? That leads to another brand new high, right? So guess what happens? Now the stock runs up right here, and we have, as you guys can assume, another U-shaped pattern right here. And guess what happens? We have another brand new high where the stock has a big time buying volume. Notice we just started the day. We just started the day. And you guys can already see we have a high, we have a high, we have a high, and it's all big buying volume moving in on this play. That's so cool to see just there alone. Just there alone, we're seeing all these little U-shaped patterns start developing. And now again, you do get to a couple little U-shaped patterns that aren't, getting the biggest breakout that we would like to see ever. But we do have a couple other little setups in here. Now again, where else could we see some nice little setups? What else could we be looking at? Well, we could also see that this stock does have a very nice overall trend line. This trend line, if we wanted to kind of just carry it out, is we have bounce play right there, bounce play right there. You could see right here, nice little bounce play right here. This stock does have a very nice trend line where it's trying to just hold up above this area. Now, I know this is not perfectly straight, and that's just because I am drawing with a mouse. But again, that trend line is helping us be able to find different areas to be able to get in on this bounce play. Okay, so we have a couple of U-shapes. Deck, do you see any sort of triangles starting to form on this stock? Well, again, I can see at least a few different triangles on this play. First area I could definitely see a triangle would probably be right here. Now, where does triangles form? Triangles form after, again, very big spikes. And then what do we talk about? The stock forms in a very tight little area where essentially we have a spike on up. The stock drops, pops, drops, pop, drops, pop, drops, pop, until, again, shoots on up. That's going to be our triangle. So, where's our triangle? Top resistance right here. We have, again, bottom support right here. Guess what happened? Stock spiked on up, triangle. Notice, where did the big buying volume come in? There you go. There's the big buying volume. Big buying volume comes through on the triangle. So we've had 3 U-shaped patterns. If you want to even count a little bit more, I wouldn't even mind if you counted this one right here to this one right here. Those 2 top resistance lines, and had a little bit of a U-shaped pattern right there as well, which led to, again, a very nice bull flag pattern, a nice triangle, which led to a very nice squeeze and be able to pop on up. And these are little tiny triangles right here. These are little tiny squeezes, little tiny U-shapes that are just working out so great. Now, of course, what did we want to look at on this play? You can also see that this stock, we had our big U-shaped pattern, where again, we have our top resistance line right here. If we want to just basically go straight across the board, guess what's going to happen? Well, we're going to have our ginormous U-shape pattern where we have, again, stock drops, U-shapes back on up. Guess what happens? Buying volume moves on in. And guess what? Stock pops up to a new high. Stock went all the way from around 550 all the way up towards around 650. That's a great climb right there. That's a great move. I know it doesn't look that big, but that's about a 60, 70 cent move right there. You invest, 1,000 shares on this play, you could be making $700 just like that alone. So, I mean, just from this, just from the little information we just learned, we can start being able to break these down a lot more and be able to understand them. We're able to break these down a lot more and be able to say to ourselves, oh, wow, look at all the times big buying volume moved in. Look at all the times that I can now realize, all right, hey, I know the stock's going to start climbing. If I see, again, big buying volume, 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 all because these U-shapes and triangles, I know, again, where the stock is going to rise next, and I don't really have any sort of errors. I don't really have any sort of confusion, and I know I'm going to be able to make money. There's a reason, again, why I'm able to consistently make money in the stock market. Today, I'm up $2,225. I haven't lost one trade today. It's because I look for these little signs and these little tells on where, again, buying volume is going to move in, so I'm able to go ahead and take advantage of it. And even if I miss the buying volume, I know, again, we could possibly be having a very nice pullback right after that. So U-shapes and triangles, absolutely awesome. And you guys should always be on the hunt for these U-shapes and triangles because they are going to be helpful and very, very successful in your trading. Very, very important. Now, I do want to take some time and go over where you guys may want to be buying on these U-shaped patterns and, of course, on these triangles. So let's take some time and do that. When we take a look at our U-shaped patterns, I like to break these U-shaped patterns down in a couple different areas. So let's just say we have our standard U-shape. Spike on up. Stock, of course, has our U-shaped pattern. And now what are we looking for next? We're looking for our breakout to the upside. Now, you guys may have heard me talk about this a few times in chat. But what we basically have here is we have our A wall, we have our B wall, and we are going to be having our C wall. So we have our top resistance that has already formed. We know our top resistance is going to carry over to right here. And then when I look at this play, I have A wall, B wall, C wall, and then we get our breakout, and we could really just put a D up here. A, B, C, and D. Now, do we ever want to buy on A? There's no need to buy on A because that could just lead to the stock doing what? Spiking on up, dumping on down. We don't ever want to buy on A. There's really no purpose of it. Do we ever want to buy on B? Well, that would be the stock spikes on up, comes back down, finds little support, and keeps on dumping. No, we don't ever need to buy on B either. But where we do want to look to try to buy on most cases are going to be buy on C. This is where we want to buy most of the times. You can buy on C or you can buy on D. Either work. I prefer trying to look to buy on C. Why do I try to look to buy on C, guys? Well, because if a stock spikes on up and starts falling back on down, and now we start seeing a U-shape develop, this is a very popular pattern. A very popular pattern as the stock starts approaching back up to the high of the day. And even the moment we start getting this little bit of a U-shape pattern start forming, you'll start noticing that buying volume starts increasing on the chart. And that means buyers are returning back into the play. So buyers are returning back into the play as it pushes back on up towards its old resistance line. So let's say, of course, you bought in on the stock at the price of C, right? Which would be right here. Worst case scenario is the stock runs up towards its resistance line, it gets rejected, and it starts fading its way back on down, which again has happened many times, right? That happens more than you think, where a stock runs on up, hits that resistance line, starts falling back on down. I have an example of that, GMHI. GMHI, I believe this happened yesterday on this play, where this stock, I try to have a little bit of a U-shape. Let me actually go back to yesterday. Look what we had here. And it still had a pretty nice breakout, but it did not be able to hold it. Yesterday, we had a very nice breakout on a U-shape pattern. We had a nice spike on up towards around 1784. Stock dropped on down, made a big U-shape pattern, got a huge breakout, and then started coming back on down, from there. So again, not just because it breaks out means it's going to be super successful, but look how much money you could have made from $17.80 all the way up towards around $19 before the stock did start coming back on down. Now, in most cases, it doesn't come back down this hard, but sometimes it does come back down this hard. So what's the beauty of looking to buy at C? The C wall right here. Because either A, if it got rejected at that resistance line, guess what? You could always get out and break even. How nice is it that I can teach you a strategy where, hey, we buy in at C even if it doesn't break out and starts falling its way back on down, we can get out at C and again, not lose $1. So hey, let's buy in at C, run up to, again, strong resistance of D. If it gets rejected, we can still, again, sell and break even. We could sell for a small profit. Best case scenario is the stock breaks resistance. We go on a massive breakout and we're able to make some big time money. So again, we're going to see massive U-shaped patterns, nearly every single day. I will tell you, nearly every single day, you're going to see some sort of pattern just like this develop, where again, you can break it down in your head and you could say to yourself, all right, hey, here's the A wall. Again, kind of, at the bottom right here is the B. Then we start again moving on up towards around the C, and here's a D. Once we start seeing this big breakout right here, this would be an amazing area to look for an entry. Because look at this break of this resistance line, massive spike, massive room. I mean, this is pure money right here. Let's say worst case scenario, what happens? The stock runs on up towards its old resistance, which is where? Old resistance, which is going to be its high of the day from its morning spike. And then guess what happens? It starts falling. It's okay. We entered already down low. We're not going to be losing any money. So again, it's kind of like the worst thing that's going to happen is we break even on a lot of our plays, right? That's not too shabby at all to just be able to break even on our play. That's an amazing strategy. Hey, you can only make money or you, again, only break even. Well, if you follow this to a T, that's going to be something that it could be very possible in your trading, which I absolutely love. So GMHI, here's an example of a great U-shaped pattern. Obviously, again, EARS right here. EARS, I've already talked about this one. We could break this down and talk about the ABC, right? What do we have right here? We could see right here as the stock comes up towards our top resistance, there's our resistance wall. Resistance, we can drag it right on across, right? We have our A wall. We are going to have our B wall. We are going to have our C. And then, of course, we have our D. Notice what happens. If we buy on the C, even if it hits this top area and gets rejected, we know it's getting rejected, just sell right there. But in most cases, what starts happening? The stock, when we come up to the C, we do get some sort of breakout. And we start seeing that the buying volume starts pushing on in and pushes the stock up towards around new highs. So again, that's something that's absolutely great. So we've been seeing a couple different breakouts, so far today. Let's just go through some of our top gainers. Are there any other, patterns, out of some of these top gainers today? Are there any other big time breakout, setups just off of these squeezes? Well, a lot of times we could see EARS. We've already talked about a couple of U-shaped patterns. We talked about a couple of triangles. What about CAAP? Anything happen over on CAAP? Well, let's take a look over here. What happened on this play today? CAAP was able to go from 360, spiked all the way up towards around that 555 mark. Let's go back to, again, this morning where this stock really started getting a little bit more hype and a little bit of attention. Do you guys see a U-shape? And as again, once we see the U-shape, we know, again, this is going to be able to bring us some nice potential. So where's our U-shape pattern? We have our top resistance right here. We can drag this, of course, across the board. And what do we know at this point now? Well, we have our A, we have our B, we have our C, and we know, again, the breakout's the D. Once we start seeing the stock U-shape up and around, entry could be at C, and then, of course, we get that nice breakout, that next nice rip. So how awesome is it to learn more about these U-shape patterns, learn about, again, these different areas where we can go ahead and buy these stocks to be able to make money? And now you might be saying to yourself, well, Dek, what about the triangle, right? What about buying at the triangle? How can we do that? Well, again, in most cases, let's just draw a standard triangle where the stock, again, spikes on up. Stock spikes on up towards around a new high, then the stock falls, climbs, falls, climbs, falls, climbs, whatever it could be, right? And then so we have our top resistance, and then on top of that, guys, what else are we going to be seeing? We are going to be having, we'll just keep this in black, our bottom support. This is obviously going to be a little bit different, right? Right here, we're going to be having our A is going to be establishing, right, where our resistance line is going to be. Our B right here is going to be establishing where our support is going to be. And then from there, guys, it's a little bit tougher because we're waiting for the stock to really squeeze itself. As long as we see the stock funneling itself, we can say to ourselves, all right, hey, let's see if this builds a higher low. That's the most important thing for breakouts. If you want to see a breakout, you want to see a stock bounce right here. And if it comes back on up, you want to see it bounce right here, a higher low. So we have one low, it bounces again at a higher area. So where would our C be? Our C would be after the stock starts forming higher lows because our A established resistance, our B established support, our C is going to be showing us, and again, you could pick either one, maybe second one or third one, to say to ourselves, hey, we are having truly higher lows, where we are seeing that the stock initially bounced at B, but now again, we are bouncing higher up. If we're bouncing higher up, it shows that buyers are in on this play. Last but not least, our D is going to be our breakout, where the stock is again getting into the corner of the triangle to get the squeeze on up. So we have our A, establishing resistance, B, which is establishing support, C, which is going to be building higher lows, and D is where we're going to get our breakout. As always, we like to try to buy in on C, but there's nothing wrong with buying in on D as well. And again, this is almost like the U-shape pattern, if you guys know, where again, we have our U-shape setup. When we have our U-shape setup, what happens right here? Our A wall, right? Our A is going to be establishing resistance. A is establishing resistance, right? Our B right here is going to be A is going to be establishing the resistance and the drop. Then on top of that, B is going to be support. C is going to be the higher lows. And then again, D is the breakout. So C is always the higher lows. D is always the breakout. B is usually support, and A is establishing resistance. And that's what we look for. So where would be our nice triangle right here? Well, CAAP is a perfect example, right? Do you guys see the triangle on CAAP? Don't look too hard into it. Right? We just had a beautiful U-shape pattern that I told you about, right? We have our U-shape right here where the stock again had this nice U-shape and then got a big time breakout. But notice what that breakout leads to. Isn't it a little funny how the stock goes straight on up like this, and then what happens? We have a little bit of a lower low while we also have a little bit of higher lows. So we have a basically right here, let me get rid of this and stare right at this picture right here. Isn't it funny how we have a spike, U-shape, breakout, and then again, what happens right here? Stock is again starting to form a little bit of that consolidation, that little triangle. So here's our triangle right here. Bottom support on this play. Top resistance on this play. Where is again the big breakout? The breakout happens in the corner of the triangle. Higher lows are starting to form. As you guys can see, we have our A, we have our B. You guys can start seeing right here, we got a little bit, let me get rid of that right there. You guys can see we also have a little bit of our C. And then, of course, the D is the breakout. Now, again, triangles can be a little bit more tricky. The most important thing to focus on is either A, watch for higher lows, or B, watch for the breakout, which would be at the D area. So that's where, again, you guys would want to be looking at. But notice, look at this big breakout right here because the stock is squeezing itself. That's all the stock's doing. It's squeezing it until it absolutely pops and absolutely rips and runs. So that's an awesome thing to be able to see right here, that we have these beautiful U-shapes, we have this nice rip, triangle pattern forms, big time breakout, and that leads to this awesome rip and awesome run. And again, if you take a look on these plays, again, look where, again, all this big time buying volume came on through. The biggest buying volume in the whole entire day happened when? When A, we broke through the U-shape pattern, right? So again, we broke through the U-shape pattern, which was absolutely awesome. Let me get this in a different color and you guys can see it. So the U-shape pattern broke on out. And then on top of that, we had our bull flag pattern right here, which led to a big spike. And that's, again, big time buying volume. So again, look at the chart. There wasn't any sort of buying volume until, again, we had our initial U-shape pattern. And then we had our bull flag pattern, which is our triangle. So just from here, we're already learning that these U-shapes and these triangles can really, again, lead to all the different patterns that lead towards all these big time breakouts. So many people skip the fundamentals. So many people skip all the different fundamentals behind this and just be like, oh, I want to learn different patterns. Well, again, young grasshopper, U-shapes and triangles is where you guys are really going to want to start off with, as this is going to help you develop the real kind of true sense of being able to say to ourselves, hey, if I can find those throughout the day, I know where buying power is going to be. I know where the buying volume is going to move on in through. So again, just in this lesson right here, team, I wanted to take the next 20 minutes or so and go over how we can start developing and how to start seeing these breakout patterns and to make it very simple, very easy. We don't need to say, all right, guys, a breakout's going to happen with the 13 EMA crosses across the VWAP. The VWAP may be going on the bearish side of the MACD, but if the RSI does cross over on the next month of the evolved clips, make sure, again, you don't cross over your hairs. Again, you want to make sure that the strings are not always interlapping. If they are interlapping, you got to always watch out for the 2 times average volume float. And again, you just never really want to watch out for that because that can lead towards a lot of trouble. You might be saying like, Dek, what the heck did you just say? Right? We don't need to get complicated like that. I don't even know what I just said. So the thing is, break down stock trading to make it simple. U-shapes, triangles, again, we don't need to put ourselves over our head. It's all about making money at the end of the day. We don't need to have crazy indicators. We don't need to, again, do crazy things that are confusing. It's not about, making it as hard as possible. It's about breaking these chart patterns down so you can see it and be able to understand where the next spike is going to be. So in today's lesson, obviously, I just wanted to give that nice introduction about what I'm always searching for on, of course, these breakouts. And of course, it all comes down to U-shaped patterns, break of resistance, and squeezes, which lead to, again, very nice spikes. Awesome job. Awesome work. And if you have any questions about that, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. We will be doing, again, more of this lesson coming on up in the next few days. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Awesome job. Awesome work. And again, great job, team.